God, it feels nice to get up fresh and early in the year, ready to make YouTube videos. Wait, is it February already? Did I sleep for an entire month? Oh, boys, we better get cracking. Nobody Saves the World is a short, cartoony, light-hearted open-world RPG with enough quirks added to the formula to make it a very compelling start to 2022. There, I just reviewed it in about 10 seconds, so I guess the next 9 minutes will be a painfully slow scrolling list of my Twitch subs. Bye! Okay, fine, I guess I should elaborate. In Nobody Saves the World, you play as a soulless husk who's just awoken from that all-too-familiar video game amnesia, and quickly discovered that you exist in a world that's slowly being overtaken by the Calamity, a world-destroying purple goop that must be the Omicron to Breath of the Wild's Delta variant, because my god does this stuff get everywhere. Shortly after waking up, you also find out that a wizard named Nostramagus has gone missing, and after rummaging around his stuff, you come across a magic wand that allows you to shapeshift into various different forms, and so begins your journey to rid the world of the Calamity. Right off the bat, I will say that the single best thing about this game is just how focused it is. As someone who's never really been the biggest fan of open worlds, I can really appreciate that this game didn't just stretch the map to its limit and fill it with copy-pasted side quests. In fact, in what is an almost refreshing change, most people will need to beat most of the quests in the game to finish it. Another small change to the common RPG formula is that you cannot level up by simply grinding mobs, you can only gain XP by completing quests. This may not sound like a particularly interesting change until you realise how ingrained this is to the gameplay loop. You have two different things to level. You have your character's level that improves your base stats, but you also have a separate rank for each form you can shapeshift into, and each of these have quests unique to them which allows the game to provide unique challenges for each form, but I'll get back to this. The final puzzle piece is that almost all the quests provide stars. These effectively function as the keys required to get into the legendary dungeons, which are the main source of calamity corruption for each area, and thus the dungeons are required to progress the story. Each of these also contain a piece of the magic MacGuffin, but I'll get back to that when I talk about the story. So to tie it all together, you can't get into the main dungeons without stars. Oh no. But you can get stars by completing either regular quests for the people, or the quests related to the various shapeshifted forms, which in turn levels up your forms, and thus unlocks more abilities and forms to mess around with. Hooray! All of this lays on top of each other to create a very familiar and polished but always entertaining gameplay loop where you run around clearing dungeons and running errands while experimenting with the different forms, all in the name of getting stars from both form quests and regular quests, so you can essentially go and become a mediocre Calamity cleanup maid. With that said, I think it should be obvious that most of the time spent in this game will be focused on combat, so how does that hold up? Well, to be completely honest, it's not amazing. It's an action RPG in which a lot of the fights simply have too many enemies to keep track of, a whirlwind of particle effects making it difficult to tell what's going on, and perhaps most damning of all, pretty uninspired enemy placements due to the majority of the dungeons being procedurally generated. But, despite all of this, I enjoyed almost all the combat in the game, and the reason for this is simply down to the amount of variety it throws at you. You have 15 different forms to mess around with, each with 3 unique abilities, and one thing I haven't mentioned until now is very early on you get the ability to customize each form a fair bit. If you think Ranger's Arrow Flurry ability would be sick on the horse, you can just throw it on the horse and see how it works. In fact, every form will have quests in which you will need to mix and match forms and abilities. This means that while the core of the combat is so-so, you'll constantly be attempting to complete quests for the forms that require bizarre approaches to combat, making it feel just a little bit different each time. Also, this game has pretty impressive enemy variety, especially considering it's only about 12 hours long. The game does have a few challenges I didn't complete because of the difficulty. For example, there is a dungeon in which everything gets killed in one hit, including yourself, so it's got something for the masochists too. But even outside of the sheer difficulty, you will often be required to overcome a challenge with multiple solutions, like bypassing laser defenses, surviving saw blade patterns from booby traps, winning a race against a witch, or maybe just tricking a shopkeeper into thinking you're multiple different people using shapeshifting to get the one per customer deal multiple times. games. So with the core experience out the way, I do have to say the rest of the package is fairly compelling, but nothing incredible. The world's cartoony and goofy characters all lend to the comedic tone of the game, but I can't say I ever found myself more than chuckling. The best comedic moments were always found ingrained into the game's mechanics. For example, right at the start, you find a mighty warrior who is so strong they can knock out any rat in one punch, so your quest is to work out how to survive a hit from them in your rat form. The story is the weakest link. Fortunately, the game doesn't spend too much time on it, so this is very much a nitpick, but the Calamity has very little threatening presence because of how goofy the game is, so I kinda wish they made the Calamity part of the joke instead of having all the characters take it completely seriously. And I won't spoil it here, but what happens with the missing Nostramagus and how everything resolves is one of the most anticlimactic and predictable things about the entire game. As a few final points, I liked the variety in the locations across the map. Everything felt very visually distinct, each zone felt unique between each other. I'm also glad they didn't have any bullshit RPG gear juggling, and the bodybuilder is hands down the best form. So overall, I felt like this was a solid start to the year, and if you're in the market for a streamlined open world game, I would recommend giving this one a shot. 7 out of 10.